and Auditability Reform Panel. I'd like to welcome today's folks who are going to testify on organizational challenges in achieving sound financial management and audit readiness. In our first couple of hearings, we received testimony at both the DoD level and at the military department level on the challenges faced in attaining audit readiness by 2017. One of the primary challenges relates to DoD's large and complex organizational structure. DoD operations include a wide range of defense organizations, including military departments and their respective major commands and functional activities, large defense agencies, and field activities. Today we'll hear from representatives from Military Systems Command, Logistics Community, and the Defense Agency providing finance and accounting services to DoD components. These organizations play a key role in DoD's ability to prove its financial management and achieve audit readiness. Although you normally not associate the acquisition, sustainment, and logistics communities with financial management, military commands and these functional communities generate and maintain financial activity that flows into DoD's financial statements. For example, logistics systems used to provide tactical units with information on maintenance and transportation of equipment are the same systems used to provide asset information for reporting in financial statements. Without proper controls within these functional communities, DoD will not be able to achieve auditability. The Defense Finance and Accounting Service provides finance and accounting services to the DoD components. In fiscal year 2010, DFAS processed 169 million pay transactions, paid 11.4 million commercial invoices, and dispersed $578 billion. Since their activities are so integral to the financial activity reported in DoD's component financial statements, challenges faced at DFAS must be addressed in order for DoD to progress towards auditability. During these times of resource constraints and budget cuts, it's imperative that the Department of Defense have reliable, useful, and timely information for decision-making. Therefore, it's critical that all DoD organizations within and outside the financial management community work together to achieve effective fiscal management. I'd like to thank our witnesses for taking the time out of their schedules to be with us this morning. First up this morning will be Lieutenant General Mitchell Stevenson from Deputy Chief of Staff Logistics, G4 United States Army. Vice Admiral David Archel, all right. Sorry, Vice Admiral. Commander, Naval Air Systems Command. Major General Judy Federer, Department of Logistics, Deputy Chief of Staff, Logistics, Installations, and Mission Support, U.S. Air Force. And Ms. Martha Smith from Director, Defense Finance Accounting Services, Cleveland. I'll now turn to my colleague, 2-Sub Joe Courtney, for an opening statement if he chooses.
Admiral appreciates that moniker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, just to save time for the record, Mr. Andrews prepared a opening. Well, there it is. The man's here. I will yield to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews.
I thank my friend from Connecticut for his brilliant statement and apologize to the chairman for being late. We appreciate the witnesses being here this morning. I'm looking forward to this morning's hearing because I think it takes us another level down. I don't mean that in a judgmental sense, another level of specificity in our mission. The chairman began the hearings at the DoD level. We talked about the department-wide effort to reach the auditability goal in time. We then went to the service level last week and heard about the plans of the services, and I think we have assembled before us this morning ladies and gentlemen who will execute the service plans because they're dealing with the actual stuff. You know, how much rolling stock we still have left in Iraq and Afghanistan, as the general and I spoke about the other day, that you can't have good auditable financial statements if you don't have a good control and data information system. And I think we're talking to some individuals this morning who do that very well. So, Chairman, thank you for this next step in our process. I look forward to the hearing. Thank you, Joe.
Rob, thank you. General Stevenson, you're up. Thank you.
Chairman Conaway, Ranking Member Andrews, rather than read my opening statement, I'd ask that it just be admitted to the record and that I quickly summarize just a couple of the key points within it. As the Senior Logistics Staff Officer in the Army, I can assure you that we logisticians fully understand the importance of auditability and in fact are working closely with our teammates in the financial management community to help the Army get there. Two key areas that we're working on are property accountability and modernizing our entire logistics automation enterprise from foxhole to factory. First, in the area of property accountability, as you can imagine, Maintaining detailed property accountability like we do in peacetime is difficult at best while fighting two wars. So last July, our Army Chief of Staff launched a property accountability campaign to help focus the entire Army on ensuring that we operate within a culture of stewardship and supply discipline. I'd be happy to elaborate on the details of that during the Q&A. And as I'm sure you appreciate, accountability requires senior leader participation at every level. And so we use the Army's inspection and audit agencies to ensure compliance. We've assigned senior chief warrant officers to logistics staffs to provide oversight to both commanders and unit supply personnel, and we've caused there to be a significant increase in command supply discipline inspections Army-wide. We're getting after it. Second, in the area of logistics automation, we are in the process of implementing the Global Combat Support System Army, based on a proven commercial product, in fact, the business market's leading software in integrated maintenance, supply, and financial accounting. Logistics transactions such as the acquisition of capital property, the performance of maintenance, the receipt, storage, and issue of supplies will be linked to their financial consequences at the transaction level. This will be a first for the Army, and it will be key to establishing auditable business processes. We have the system fully deployed in the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment in Fort Ord, California. Next month, we'll test it at Fort Bliss in Texas, and starting next summer, we'll begin fielding Army-wide, active, National Guard, and Reserve, a total of 160,000 users. GCSS Army will help make auditability a reality for the Army, and we project it will save us a considerable amount of money in the out years. Related to GCSS Army, we also now have fully fielded something called the Logistics Modernization Program, which is the logistics system we use at the national level in our depots and arsenals and ammunition plants. It's based on the same leading commercial software as GCSS Army, enabling an easy exchange of information between the two systems without costly interfaces. It's now fully deployed throughout the Army Materiel Command to 25,000 users and is helping us more accurately capture data associated with the $24 billion inventory and 2 million in daily transactions that are performed at that level of the Army. LMP will enable the entire business area at the national level to also be auditable. Together, these systems, along with the General Fund Enterprise Business System and a continued commitment to improving property accountability, will enable the Army to better trace logistics operations costs and provide transparency. We will have more confidence in our data and will be able to make more informed decisions, thereby reducing waste and saving the taxpayer money. We're pretty excited about it, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Mitchell. David?
Congressman Conway, Congressman Andrews, members of the panel, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the Naval Air Systems Command efforts at achieving and sustaining audit readiness. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the turning this ship into the wind right on time and going to the launch at 0800. That's impressive, sir. I appreciate that. As the commander of Naval Air Command, about 37,000 people, and all told, and about $45 billion per year in TOA, and approaching about 289 over the FIDUP. I am personally committed to the Navy's financial improvement initiatives, achieving and sustaining audit readiness by standardizing financial processes to provide accurate and audible information that supports program execution decisions is one of my top priorities. NAVAIR's financial improvement program and business process standardization efforts are being led by accounting and financial management experts, with the strong support from functional experts across my command in multiple business process areas to include acquisition, contracts, logistics, human resource, corporate ops. To support the Department of Defense efforts at achieving audible financial statements, NAVAIR is performing an assessment of the E2D Advanced Hawkeye program. The goal of NAVAIR's E2D MDAP project is to demonstrate financial stewardship of funds allotted for a major acquisition program and assess the audit readiness of the Navy Enterprise Resource Planning, or ERP, environment related to business processes. We are on track for completion of our assessment at the end of September this month. The NAVAIR team is taking lessons learned from the E2D MDAP effort and developing an audit readiness strategy to deploy across the command over the some 110 other MDAP programs. This strategy will stress the importance of internal controls, compliance with regulations, maintaining an audit trail, and other concepts that will contribute to NAVAIR's ability to achieve and sustain audit readiness. NAVAIR is leveraging Navy ERP to strengthen internal controls, enhance standardization, and improve the quality of information available to our decision makers. Having implemented an ERP pilot, which was entitled Sigma back in 2002, NAVAIR is a second-generation ERP user and has significant experience with Navy ERP and relies on the system for our business operations, including project planning, funds execution, funds validation and support of procurement and contracting, training and awards, processing, time and attendance, accounting, and external financial reporting. The implementation of Navy ERP has provided increased fidelity of our financial data, providing our program managers timely insight into program execution and the ability to track dollars committed, obligated, and expended, and give program managers and field teams increased visibility into the interdependencies of program costs, schedules, resources, and risks. NAVAIR supports the Navy, DoD, and congressional direction to improve the quality of financial information and business processes necessary to achieve clean financial audits by 2017. I am, and more importantly, my entire command, is committed to achieving these initiatives and believe that the resources invested will produce a significant return on investment to the warfighter and the American taxpayer. I look forward to your questions, sir.
Thanks, David. Judy?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Andrews, distinguished members of the panel, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss several issues that are important to your United States Air Force: sound financial management, audit readiness, and responsible stewardship of taxpayer dollars. The Air Force logistics community is fully engaged in supporting and achieving financial improvement and audit readiness compliance by 2017. Our plan to meet that timeline involves evaluation, discovery, and mediation of the many facets that affect audit readiness. We're making progress on that plan by ensuring established inventory controls and equipment accountability processes produce the maximum combat capability from each taxpayer dollar and equip our warfighters with the critical assets required to support operational demands. We're also implementing corrective actions where necessary to ensure assets are recorded in the appropriate accountable system of record, valued at the correct amount, and that assertions for existence and completeness are timely and accurate. The value of audit readiness is more than financial. It is fundamental to what we do every day across the Air Force logistics enterprise that enables us to responsibly procure, store, and issue inventory and equipment that contributes to our mission. We are reinforcing that message with operational units at every level to ensure that all airmen are doing what it takes to achieve a clean audit. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Andrews, and distinguished members of the panel, it's an honor to be here today. Thank you for your interest and engagement on this important effort as we work towards audit readiness in 2017. And thank you for your continued strong support of our airmen and their families. I submitted a written statement for the record, and I look forward to the question and answer period.
Thanks, Judy. Martha?
Chairman Conaway, distinguished panel members, I'm pleased to be here to discuss the financial services DFAS provides the Department of Defense and the complexity involved in providing those services. I'll discuss our efforts to get DFAS as a service provider to the DoD to an audit-ready state by fiscal year 2017, as well as discuss how we are helping our customers meet their assertion goals. I'm providing detailed information on this issue in a statement for the record. DFAS provides centralized payroll and commercial payment and financial reporting services for the military and its civilians. We also provide the summary-level financial reports Congress uses to monitor the financial health of the military services. To illustrate the complexity of our work, all financial reporting begins with a single transaction. It can be as simple as a DoD civilian inputting their time and attendance, or as complicated as defense officials drafting a multi-million-dollar contract for major weapon systems. Each of our 169 million pay transactions for fiscal year 2010 had an associated line of accounting. Consolidated into the 1,129 active DoD appropriations, each transaction must be reflected in over 255 million general ledger accounts. Just an example of the complexity, the current Black Hawk helicopter program consists of 3 contracts. Funding is distributed among several services and foreign military sales. Since the original contract award, there have been almost 1,700 contract modifications, and we have made approximately 22,000 payments for nearly $7.8 billion. Since fiscal year 2009 alone, DFAS has received approximately 211 monthly invoices for disbursements averaging $188 million per month. Nearly all DoD transactions make their way to one of our many systems, some owned by the services, but used by the DFAS employees. Employees create or monitor the transactions, validate authenticity and accuracy, consolidate the transactions into reports, and validate the accuracy of those reports. We project DFAS will disperse approximately $668 billion in fiscal year 2011. Additionally, each month we reconcile approximately $100 billion worth of transactions, $85 billion in disbursements, and $15 billion in collections. Our legacy systems are originally designed to provide local-level management reports and summary-level information used to prepare financial statements. Over the years, much of the transaction processing and statement preparation shifted from the services to DFAS. It is a challenging effort, and added to the mix are the new ERPs, Enterprise Resource Planning Systems, used by the local-level commands produce financial information for the programs. The ERPs provide a level of discipline and standardization that is extremely beneficial to DoD's audit efforts and internal controls. However, a massive amount of data is still fed into the ERPs from the legacy environment, since the ERPs do not process all types of transactions such as military pay and civilian pay. Visibility and traceability of transactions is integral to any audit, so we're working hard to ensure our processes are audit ready. DFAS efforts to standardize and strengthen internal controls began 20 years ago. Since 1991, we have reduced our footprint from 300 to just 10 sites and standardized our day-to-day activities and improving and eliminating systems. By consolidating field-level accounting and finance functions into our financial reporting entities, we have better opportunity to standardize processes and data and to fix problems at the source. DFAS's most valuable asset is our people, and we've made investments to strengthen our workforce. Today, 85% of our accountants have degrees. Since 2007, we've seen an 88% increase in the number of certified public accountants and certified management accountants, and a 322% increase in project management professionals and their certifications. To support customers' audit efforts, we've mapped processes, implemented control points, tested internal controls, and mitigated risks for many key processes. We use the overarching principles from the DoD Financial Improvement and Audit Readiness Plan to ensure audit readiness is focused on day-to-day activities, that a proactive approach is used for correcting deficiencies, and that our improvement initiatives are sustainable. Our goal is to be prepared when the customers are cert on specific parts of their financial statements. We also must be prepared for examinations of the services we provide customers that contribute to their assertion schedules. We've established audit readiness teams to provide real-time support during pre-assertion preparation, during the audit, and post-audit. We partnered successfully with the Marine Corps and identified improvement initiatives which we can replicate for the other services. And we are establishing a senior steering committee to proactively implement lessons learned from all audit findings. DFAS is walking in concert with our customers, expediting improvement initiatives, addressing systems challenges, and moving toward audit readiness and the goals established by DoD and the Congress. The support of our senior-most leaders, involvement of every employee in the process, and the continued collaboration with our customers are all key to our success. Chairman Conaway and distinguished members, thank you for your time today, and I look forward to your questions.
Well, I'd like the witnesses, this may be a record. 4 witnesses doing their statements in less than 20 minutes. That's, thank you very much. We'll endeavor to stay on the 5-minute clock as well. And with just 4 hours, we may get to go more than just one round. Appreciate everybody being here, and thank you very much for having it. The top layer of folks have talked about putting in place performance evaluation measures for people who are responsible for making this happen, and then holding them accountable to those standards. Could you give us a quick couple of sentences about each of your 4 organizations and how you're making sure that, you know, the wonderful things you said, Martha, is spot on, but unless you track it, unless you hold folks accountable, it's not going to happen. So could you talk to us about how you, the uniform as well as civilian personnel, how you make sure they've got the right incentives in place and that we measure those progress?
Sir, I think you sort of alluded to it. Our Secretary of the Army has directed that starting in fiscal year 12 and forward, all senior leaders involved in both logistics, finance, and those things necessary to get us auditable will have a requirement to have in their appraisals measures of their performance and toward meeting that goal. They'll be rated on how well they've supported the goals. And I think that'll be enormously motivating.
Okay. David.
Mr. Chairman, I think I don't want to repeat, it's very similar on the Navy side. Today, if I was to look at my senior executives, who has a performance evaluation that goes into maintaining audit readiness or these kind of things, today I would say it's probably my comptroller. But starting in FY12, anyone that is involved in generating a financial transaction is going to have accountability within their senior executive performance appraisals. That will get down to deputy PEO levels who are clearly responsible for generating transactions, or into the many people that go within that as well. On the admirals or the flag side of the house, I would tell you that our Vice Chief's been very clear with a series of directing memos about we will take this seriously across our flag community to make sure that it is also brought home on the military side. So reflected in our evaluations and fitness reports as we go forward there as well, sir.
Great.
Mr. Chairman, the Undersecretary of the Air Force and the Vice Chief of the Air Force sent a note out to all the major commanders, those operational commands, the 4 stars that really have the airmen that are touching the systems, and directed that both from a functional side, that the performance plans of our senior civilians include specific performance measures associated with financial improvement audit readiness. And those measures, their performance will be measured in that regard. On the command side, where we have airmen that are out there that are affecting the inventory precision and doing things that are also going to contribute to audit readiness, they have also emphasized to major command commanders that it is important for commanders at all levels to understand the importance of achieving these. And the measures overall that we expect to see to the effectiveness of this very heavy senior leadership involved in this will be the continued success that we have when we assert existence and completeness, for instance, of as we continue down with our fire execution plan.
Most all of the components associated with becoming audit ready are an integral part of our overarching strategic plan. And we've pushed our plan down into our performance appraisals for all of our employees, all the way down to the lowest levels, trying to inculcate that culture of audit readiness into what we do on a day-to-day basis.
Well, Rob and I will look forward this time next year to visiting with a variety of folks just to see how well that's worked, and if the deadlines were missed and those kinds of things, if we're able to make that happen. Was I out of time? Okay. Rob, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to each of the witnesses for a very thorough and good job. Ms. Smith, I really concur with your comment about personnel being the key to making these audits available. When, God willing, the economy turns back up and accountants can go into the private sector, what kind of inducements do we have to retain the talent that we have at your agency in the public sector? What are the incentives and advantages to do that?
Well, I think the security that we provide the employees has been extraordinarily beneficial, and we've seen a lot of employees recently coming in from the outside industry looking to the government for a good, secure type of job. The incentives that we use, we have a very comprehensive award program that we have across DFAS. In terms of even down at the lowest level on passing awards to between employees, but we strive to again keep the audit readiness at the top of our strategic goals, and so therefore we're looking for all types of innovation and incentives to ensure that we are.
Certainly made impressive gains in the preparation quality of the workforce. We certainly want to protect that investment. General Feder, I'm impressed by the degree of intensity the Air Force has given to corrective actions. It looks like at the highest levels there's very weekly, as I understand it, reviews of what's going on. Can you tell us an example of a couple of corrective actions that you've had to follow up on and what you've done to follow up on them?
Yes, sir. Mr. Andrews, when we proceeded to assert spare engines, for instance, as one of our operating materials and supplies, we did identify that there were some gaps in our policies associated with inventories and how we report the spare engines through this process. And so we went back and had to identify a clarification and change to policy in the reporting process of those spare engines.
Does that mean it was possible that we reported more spare engines than we really had, or we missed them? What does it mean as a practical level?
In this case, we identified that about 30% of the units were not properly reporting the inventory of spare engines, and there wasn't the catch in the system that we would have expected to identify that there was a gap in that
This is a
reporting.
perfect example of why we have this panel, and I commend the chairman and ranking member for creating it. It's possible that if you didn't fix that problem, it's possible we would have made a financial decision to purchase more engines or more parts, so we actually had them. So you buy something you don't need, and the opposite is true, by the way, that we might erroneously believe we have spares and we don't, and not have the readiness that we should. So keep up the good work. Admiral, I know that there was an ERP pilot in the Navy in 2002. I wondered what the most important lessons learned were from that pilot and how you've applied them to this broader effort that you're engaged in now.
Thank you for the question, sir. You're right. In 2002, one of the pilots, there were several pilots in the Navy, to be clear. Naviair had one of them, which was called Sigma. It was a first-generation ERP system. In that ERP system, it allowed us to get financial visibility across all of our programs. And so you had the ability to take our data input from PBIS or our budget inputs, and it would come down to line item disbursement through appropriations and right down into accounts. So program managers had the visibility without having to manually enter that data and continue then verify and do a lot of manual rework, and that creates errors. Anytime you have variation in process, that's not a good thing.
So you're able to reduce those errors by streamlining the system?
Yes, sir. And over the time, approximately 260 man-years in terms of what I would say would be in our experience with ERP. We eliminated in Sigma, which was the first generation ERP, about 55 legacy programs. And since we've incorporated to Navy ERP, it's been about a 4.
What was the reference to 260 man-years?
Man-years reduction in man work to do the kinds of things I'm talking about tracking dollars, about validating and verifying the system.
One person working for 260 years would have had to do these tasks, and now you've eliminated that.
Yes, sir.
We should try that around here, Mike. I'm going to ask for a second round when we have a chance, because I did have a question for General Stevenson, but I'm going to yield back at this point. If we could do a second round, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Steve, 5 minutes.
Well, good morning. Thank you all for being here to continue our conversation on such a very important issue. I think from a lack of attention in the past is the reason why we're here again today and be here probably next year. And but really excited about the improvement that we've made in addressing these issues. Last week I was kind of more focused on the sharing of information between the DoD services and the agencies. And Ms. Smith, you mentioned it, taking the lessons learned, having an after-action review, and then sharing them with our partners across the DoD industries and other logistics and air and DFAS. Can y'all just share? I'm kind of wanting to know, one, is what has been some of the major obstacles or hurdles to achieving audit readiness, as well as maybe just some success stories. I think y'all mentioned some of them that's been answered, and also just your lessons learned and how are you going about sharing your information with the other branches and other services. So,
I can start. We learned a great deal from our efforts that we've done with the Marine Corps audit. One of the areas that we were focusing on is how do you reconcile all this data? We receive data from the legacy systems. We receive data. We will be receiving data from the ERPs, et cetera. So how do you give the visibility of that data to the auditors? Through the Marine Corps audit, we realized we had to give visibility of that data all the way from the beginning of the transaction all the way through to the financial reports. So we've created reconciliations across the board for all of the services, and we're working on systems that will help us do that and be able to show the auditors that this transaction can flow all the way from the financial statements back to the source. And we can retrieve that source documentation for them. Those are some of the big ones. But we have a steering committee that we're setting up that goes across the board on lessons learned, and so we can, as a DFAS entity, we can help all the services with that.
Sir, as we've progressed with our plan to achieve audit readiness, some of the things that we have seen as a success story is the value of data cleanup within our systems. And frankly, we learned this from some of our fellow service efforts that are a little bit farther along in the Air Force in some cases. But we have seen that in order to be able to use legacy systems, for instance, those systems that we have now that are not under an ERP, the value and necessity of making sure that the information that we put into our logistics systems for things like inventory management and accountability have got to be very exacting, and that before we can really achieve a clean audit, a lot of those systems we need to go back and ensure the accuracy of that data. That's one of the things that we continue to work on as we adapt our legacy systems and we mediate those systems to make sure that we can achieve the audit. Some of the obstacles that we have identified so far are specifically within those systems. As has been mentioned by one of my panel peers, the use of the systems that are not under an ERP tend to be very personnel intensive because of the fact that our systems don't talk to each other. We have inventory accountability systems that are not necessarily linked all the way in an end-to-end business process. And that requires a lot more manual labor to make sure that we can provide that exactness associated with an audit.
Congressman Palazzo, thank you for the question. As we look at the value of what we have for this effort in terms of what it is, I would say one thing for me as a commander is it's a team sport. And I think we have to, I am driving that home throughout the command, because we won't succeed if it's just a comptroller viewed activity, and it's not. So if you look at every process that we have that generates a financial transaction, there are people that are in contracts, that are in engineering, that are in testing, that contribute to that efficacy of that process. So what we're doing is taking every one of these areas where we generate a financial transaction and end-to-end processing, look at the business process to go with it, look at the controls that are in place to control that process, find out where we're not in control, and then do something about it. There are examples of that I would give in civilian pay where we had things, we were recording our civilian pay, we knew what was going on, but we actually found where we didn't have the actual ability to ensure that how do we reconcile that within, say, if there's not accounted for civilian pay. It was done differently in different areas of my organization, different competencies. We standardized that now, and by doing that, we have a standardized business process, which is key to it. So our financial improvement process is important. It feeds into the overall ability to say we're ready for financial audit readiness, but above everything else, command involvement and command participation throughout the process.
Joe, 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mike. General, your testimony was really impressive in terms of actually, just coming out and saying that you anticipate $8 billion in savings with this new system starting in 2017, which sort of takes this thing out of just the sort of theoretical and into real numbers, which obviously is important to everybody in this committee who's been going through these hearings on the challenges facing the Pentagon coming up. Can you talk a little bit about, where does that come from? Is that, waste, fraud, and abuse? Is that, other ways that you can, feel comfortable projecting that savings?
Sure. It comes from a number of different locations, but probably the one that's, I think, easiest to understand is we'll not have to do so much reconciling between separate instances. Today, the architecture, and I was going to, Sarah, answer your question if it had gotten to me, that our biggest problem has been our architecture. We've got stovepipe systems at each of our echelons that have to then pass data at end-of-day processes, and then and if the communications somehow get interrupted in part of that, and if you can imagine doing that in Afghanistan or Iraq, then maybe there's pieces of that data you're missing, you're losing, or it posts after, because data is important to be posted in a time sequence manner. And so you end up having to have lots of people at each of the echelons and in the financial community trying to match the receipts, the issues, the cancellations, the change. Did it get charged against the ledger? Did it not get charged against the ledger? All that is going to go away in our ERP system because it will all be a web-based system
operating off of a single database, and so that there's no need to reconcile anything, and all of that I think is going to go away, and that'll be a huge part of what we save.
So, I mean, that sounds like actually a fairly modest, prediction on your part, because you're not sort of getting into other ways that you may pick up, duplication or waste or whatever. I mean, so I guess we've got nowhere to go but up from that $8 billion figure, assuming you've got a really high-functioning system. Is that a safe statement to make?
I think so, and of course there's costs associated with implementing the system. So what we've tried to do is figure out through a business case what's the net savings to the Army. We think our payback starts in 2019. That we will have paid for what we've done in just that short period of time.
Admiral, you've been nodding your head, so I don't know if you want to chime in.
Well, I couldn't agree. Sorry, I'm getting the push. I couldn't agree more with an ERP for us within 1.0. It's really acquisition financial management. When you get to 1.1, that is our single supply system. So when we get into that by having that across the Navy, if you will, and our SysComs and into the NavSup, we then have visibility on all of our supply pieces and parts, which is the first time you can actually see end-to-end. So you want to see an F-18 all the way down from when it's on the flight line to the parts that support it that are needed and where those parts are and where they exist. And that would reduce sparing. It will reduce warehousing. That's where you get significant savings from ERP, above and beyond that what you get, and I mentioned before, the business end of doing accounting and reconciliation, which is on the 1.0 piece. So I think it is a tremendous one in there. I do have some concerns, and that would be, in terms of it's not a simple thing to do to take the inventories today and map them into ERP. It's a very time-consuming effort to go forward. We're in a phased approach to do that, and I know we will get there. But it's not a given that it'll be a simple throw, but it is well worth the effort in doing that.
And in terms of trying to get the resources there to get that transition done, I mean, Admiral Roughead has talked about the fact that with again, some of the cost savings and efficiencies that the Navy needs to find, that a lot of personnel are going to be sort of being moved closer to the waterfront and out of sort of, offices and is that going to kind of create a challenge in terms of that, or is that something that you think the Navy can handle, assuming, again, people are being deployed a little bit more in frontline positions?
Well, personally, I think we need to move people closer to the flight line. That's where the activity is. That's where our support is to the warfighters at the tip of the spear, if you will. So I'm an advocate for things in our FRCs, for example, about moving those assets closer to the flight line, about being able to have them spread to where our fleet's concentration areas are. So I think that's a proponent of it. There's an inherent problem in how we did contracting before in some areas when you get into supply systems. If I was to look at a previous contract, you would see there be a line item that would say spares, and it would have, who knows, 800 spare items that would be listed, but they wouldn't be listed in that. It would just be one line item in there that says spares under an equipment line item number. Within that, and appendices to that would be handwritten inventories that goes with those spares. Well, to go forward in ERP, what we need to do under improving the system would be to break those out into individual line items that come right down, and you can call out then, and then from the day you award that contract, you can track that spare from contract award. DFAS can track it, we can track it, the supply system can track them all the way through, and that's going to what eventually would lead to your ability to do the things like valuation and configuration management and accreditation. So,
thank you.
We'll do a second round if everybody's got questions. Human nature is such that you're comfortable with doing things the way you've done it in the past, and you've all talked about legacy systems, and there's a tension. Because all of this change you're doing is you don't get to take a year off from everything else you're doing in order to make this happen. You've got to continue to provide whatever data you've been providing at the exact same time. So, but you don't get to double your workforce to do this. You just have to. Everybody has to do it. And so I've observed in the past a tendency to hang on to stuff longer than you needed to. And we've talked to the other folks about this as well. How best do you track the demise of legacy systems and all the associated costs that go with just maintaining those and the extra work that's associated with that? How do you track, and do you have a plan that says, at the end of the day, we're going to have all these legacy systems that are going to be gone, so that and from our oversight standpoint, that we'll know that you're down to just those systems that are needed and necessary to make this thing work, and we're not clinging to something because it's an old comfortable pair of shoes that work. So, Martha, you want to start?
Sure. Within the DFAS walls, we've eliminated a lot of systems over the years, and we're seeing the benefits of the ERP. And believe me, we would like to see the legacy go away as fast as possible. However, we've been dealing with the legacy for a long period of time, and so in terms of the data flows, we've got that pretty well nailed down, and then we're adding the ERP stuff to it. But within the DFAS systems, we have eliminated a lot of systems. We've tracked that, and we're pretty comfortable with the new systems that we have in place now. So I think we're moving along in the right direction in that area.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, frankly, I don't think that there's any tendency in the Air Force logistics community to want to hang on to those legacy systems when we have the opportunity to transition to something like an ERP, specifically for the Air Force, the Expeditionary Combat Support System. We have seen in the pilot of ECSS, although that hasn't yielded as much information as perhaps the other service ERPs have yielded so far, but we've seen the value in being able to better provide that total asset visibility. So for the airman at the unit level who is responsible for receipt, proper storage, and accountability of spare parts, for instance, that airman can easily see through the ERP system and the way that that system is going to provide connectivity with all our systems. They can see the value of the workload that's reduced associated with that and delivering a better product to the warfighter.
Mr. Chairman, it's a great question, and it's not an easy one, but let me just try and say that on the outset, certainly legacy systems, I think personally we need to look at legacy systems in a way that some legacy systems are not all bad. We need to understand what they are and not just make this blanket statement that all legacy systems are bad. Let me explain. When I talked about Sigma, when we came on ERP and Navy, the NavAir, we had about 55 systems retired, and those were principally in financial management areas. We could do that. Since we've been on ERP, one of those systems we retired actually is Sigma. So there's been 4 then there. The Navy is on track to, I believe the number is 196 retire legacy systems with about 14 done to date. But when you look at what it is, I would say that, we, in the area of NavSub, for example, they retired legacy systems that were based on Fortran and those kind of things. They needed to be retired. They're going to be a tremendous savings. But I look at today, your point's a good one. I have to operate today and provide direct support to the fleet out there, to the Hornets that are on station, the 60 Romeos that are out there, and know what is their configuration, what's their ECPs, what do they need, know what their health and management systems are. I have vehicles today to do that. They could be supplanted or taken over into an ERP system. We need to carefully evaluate what the costs are to do that and what the true benefit is of that. So there's a place when we do this in a metered fashion, not just to say blanketly we're going to get rid of every system. But you've got a plan to track that. Yes, sir, absolutely.
Sir, I've been appointed the logistics domain owner for all logistics systems in the Army. We started out with over 800 different systems, some small, some large, and my goal is to reduce them down to our ERPs. And as of the last, I do a quarterly review. As of the last review, I think we're down to about 160. I also control the dollars that sustain those systems, so it will be very easy, I think, to enforce discipline in getting rid of them.
Thanks. Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Stevenson, thank you for your testimony. I also wanted to explore, as Mr. Courtney did, the genesis of this $8 billion savings estimate. Could you walk us through how you derived that projection?
Yes, sir. It comes from a number of components. One is inventory reduction. We think that there's about $2 billion worth of inventory reduction we can get to by having visibility over what we've got, being able to move it around and not have individual entities buying their own.
Let's not have more than we need.
Not exactly. There is reorder costs that go on because they're not sure whether what they've got on order is coming to them, and because they don't have visibility of where it is. It's kind of the Amazon.com capability that we lack today in the Army.
If this works with teenage girls, let me know, because we could try it at our house too.
Well, It is an area of concern, and I just last week had a large meeting with the RAND Corporation, who's doing some work for us on excess excess orders we're generating, and a lot of it comes from lack of confidence. I talked about the component associated with reconciling records at various levels, and it's a combination of all those things and some others that I can't recall off the top of my head that contribute toward this business case that says by 2019 you will have paid for.
Is the $8 billion over what period of time?
Through the life of the system, through 10 years.
So roughly 10 fiscal years. Let me ask a sort of very basic question to each of you from the services. General, if I wanted to know how many radio parts existed for a certain airplane today, and I needed to find one, how quickly could your group find that part and know how many that you had? Say we needed that answer ASAP. How quickly could you get the answer?
Sir, within an hour, we could go to the standard-based supply system, which is our current retail level supply inventory, and identify by stock number where those radio parts.
And you have a high degree of confidence that would be right?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Admiral, what if I want to know how many cases of water we have on Navy ships at this moment? Could we know that?
Well, I would go to the supply system to get that answer, but in terms of what I would tell you within our aviation logistics environment, automated logistics environment today under the Naval Aviation Supply Program, within the Naval Aviation Enterprise, we are very able to track both what equipment we have in the field, what ECPs are on the, what do we have to have, what's the inventory, what is the,
You
what
get that answer?
parts and pieces we have and need to support
You get
that.
an answer for us pretty quickly?
Yes, sir. Very
High
quickly.
degree of confidence again?
I do, absolutely.
And General, you and I talked the other day a little bit about this, but if we want to know how many of those clamshells we have in Iraq and the degree of disrepair or repair they're in, how quickly could you get that answer?
So the number, easy,
Yeah.
a matter of a quick inquiry. The condition, I'd have to go ask,
Right.
and that just takes time because...
So we don't have a database exists necessarily about the condition of the assets at all times.
Not when it's in the hands of the user, and that's part of our problem. It's
Yeah.
I mentioned the architecture of our current systems.
There's another aspect, if I could, so that is the value of that system, too. So
Yep.
that's part of what we have to have for audit readiness, and I think that's a concern. We're all going to have to come back with how we can do that,
Right.
but it's going to be very manual
I
intensive.
really appreciate you saying that, Admiral, because one thing we've learned from our panels, the witnesses, is that there's a real difference here between the quantity of the number of things you have and the value of them. And the value process is a subjective process as well as an objective one, which means that producing financial statements for the military is a sui generis project. I don't think it's quite like producing financial statements for a retail store or a home builder because, A, you don't really know the market value of goods because some don't have a market value. And B, you don't know their utility because they're in far-flung places around the world and whatnot. So we do appreciate the complexity of the problem. I think this has been an excellent panel, doing excellent work, and I appreciate each of you. Thank you.
Let me ask one other question. This is a relevant time. I want to make sure our witnesses get their money's worth for the preparation that was done. And thank you for whatever it is you guys did to come to it today and put that together. Leadership is key at every single level. Are we far enough along in this process that when your replacements show up and somebody moves into those slots, that the forward momentum is such that it's going to happen? Or what is it that you're looking for to make sure this process does get completed when there's a change in leadership? General Mitchell, you mentioned the other day you've got enough skin in the game that you own some of this. You really want to make it happen. So how do you each of your organizations make sure that new leadership has the same understanding of how important this is and that we don't lose any ground just because we change the top person?
Sir, I think in our case, we've got the design work done, and that's really the key. Because all we've got to do now is implement what we've designed, and I think we have irreversible momentum toward that end state. Now, it could get interrupted by lack of resources, and certainly we're counting on being able to continue to make the investments we need to make. It's fully funded in our program, but, you know, as well as I do, that could get interrupted in any year. But absent that, I think we're on a path toward irreversible momentum to get it done.
So I think it's fundamental to everything we do in the military when you look at command structures and how we do things. Measure my performance, not why I'm in NAVAIR today. Come back in a year and tell me how NAVAIR is doing, and I'll tell you how I did in command. So it's a reflection of what we instill and what we pass through. This is a team effort. It's not one carried by one individual by any means. I don't have the background or the knowledge to do this alone, and so we rely on everyone. I'm absolutely confident that it will be enduring.
Mr. Chairman, at the, in the logistics environment, at the execution level, the continued ability for an airman to make sure that inventory is right, that they store it right, that they stock it right, all those are, again, fundamental parts of what we do in logistics. But to capture the momentum that we have going towards ensuring audit readiness, we have included in the Inspector General system a special interest item to reconcile what we're doing at unit level that's going to drive us to audit readiness. We've captured it in our logistics assessment systems, performance measures for civil service members, as we talked about a little bit earlier, things like policy. But I would say in addition to all those measures, the continued DoD leadership focus on this, and certainly the interest and involvement of Congress and your panel here to make sure that we continue down this path will make a big difference.
I think it goes back to making sure that the culture of the entire organization is focused on the priorities and the strategy. And I think we've done that pretty well in the DFAS world. We haven't finished pushing it all the way down to our lower level individuals, but our trainees and our accountants that are coming in the door, the first thing that they're trained on is how do we get our processes to be better, and how do we focus on fixing the issues with the systems and so on and so forth. We've tried to change our culture from fixing the problems at the top to fixing the problems at the source, all the way down into the organization. So that's how we're trying to keep it flowing.
Rob, you have anything else?
No, thank you. Again, I'd like to thank the witnesses for excellent presentation.
I give the witnesses an opportunity to say whatever it is that you wanted to say we didn't ask or you didn't get in your opening statement. Anything that anybody wants to add for the record? Again, thank you very much for being here, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.